Guys, my name is Mo, and I am here to talk to you about interpersonal communication. Well, what is interpersonal communication? Interpersonal communication is a face to face communication where there is an exchange of information and exchange of emotions and feelings. So, usually, interpersonal communication is not about what was said, it's usually about how it was said. It's about the tone, the facial expression, the gesture, and the body language. So, there's different types of interpersonal communication. There's the verbal communication, and there's the nonverbal communication. Like I mentioned, the body language and the gesture. There's also a two types of people in interpersonal communication. There is the sender, which is the communicator, and the receiver, which is the listener. The receiver is the one who you're basically when you're listening to the communicator. You are basically receiving information or emotions or feelings that the communicator is communicating to you. So there is also different types of communication. Let's talk about the message. So the message is basically something that we do on our basically the day-to-day life. We're sending messages to the people that we're talking to. So to have an interpersonal communication, it takes two people or more, and they have to be in the conversation, basically listening and interacting. So one of the ways where the receiver, so the one who's listening, could interact is by their body language. The communicator is usually considered a sender, so he's always sending information about whatever topic he's talking about. In interpersonal communication, there's something called noise. So noise is about distractions in the background. So it could distort the message that the
The
sender
library will
is
close
sending.
in 5 minutes.
There
Please
are
prepare to leave.
other
If you
factors
need alternative
when
study
when
space,
considering
please see a
noise.
staff member.
There's inappropriate body language when the receiver would send to the communicator, or there could be a disinterest that the receiver also would show, or there is an intention of listening to the conversation. So let's talk about the feedback. I know I just mentioned noise, but also feedback is something very, very essential to interpersonal communication. Because the feedback, when the receiver receives the information from the sender, he would usually give a feedback of what he feels. Does he feel confident enough of the information that the person in front of him is saying? Or does he feel uncomfortable and does not understand that the message of the person is saying? Usually, the sender would be able to tell what kind of message the receiver is sending based on facial expression, which is called an indirect feedback, or a direct feedback by basically saying, "Can you repeat that again?" Or "I don't understand that point." There's also many different ways when giving a message to the communicator. You can also there's all sorts of body languages that could be sent, and sometimes there's also false communication, but most of the time you're trying to communicate something with your body language. Let's talk about context. So there's something called context in interpersonal communication. Context is basically it's basically like what environment you're talking in. So basically is if you're talking to your sister, there will be a different influence on the context of the communication. You're going to talk to her about family matter or something like that, different from talking to your boss or talking to a fellow student. You'll be talking more about school, and you'll be talking more about basically something related to the context of the social context of you and him. Also, the context of is influenced by the place you're in. So if we're in a school, we're more likely to speak about school related stuff. But if we are in a office, we're more likely to talk about office related stuff. Also, same thing with if you're in a sports place or a sports facility. And there's the one last thing, something called channel. Channel is basically when it's the physical meaning of of the information that's being sent. And let's talk about the work cited. So the work cited is from legacy and also is from for interpersonal communication and